I want to talk to successful people and learn about the adversity they went through, how they got through it, what we can learn from it, and help us all collectively move forward. Underdogs don't stop. Hey everyone, welcome to Underdog Untold, the first episode of 2024. The reason I have this show is because I want to tell stories about successful people that I bring on and share the adversity that they've had. These are usually very successful people, but we don't really know what happens behind the scenes and what they needed to do to overcome obstacles. So today I'm very proud to introduce a friend of mine. Her name's Lubna Najjar, CEO of Ilmoda Brands. She's something that when you meet her and listen to her, the amount of learning we can have, especially in the fashion industry. She's created a fashion apparel that was acquired. She now consults for a lot of brands. So I just want to bring her on and say hi. Lubna, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, happy 2024.
Thank you. I'm excited to be the first episode of your year. I didn't realize I was number one, 24.
You
So
are
excited.
number one of 2024. You are number one of January. You are number one of maybe a snow day outside here in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, 9 degrees. I'm glad that we're not in a studio. We're in a virtual office. But yes, it feels good to be here. I know every year it's exciting to think about, not just audit what happened in years past and think of how to make it better, but also to think about, what else can I achieve? And that first month of the year is sort of an invigorating time to sit back and say, all right, well, what am I looking to achieve? Dream big enough and then start to sort of break that down in a micro sense and figure out how it works for your year. So I love January. People always hate January because it's like the lull of post holiday. But I love it. You and I had a great conversation a couple weeks ago about what this year is about. And I'm super excited to kick it off with you.
Well, good. And one of the things I'm always learning from you and other folks in the fashion world and industry, number one, my wife will say I'm not very fashionable, so that's fine. But I really want to learn more about the fashion industry. And I think for those of us, who are still learning and have joined today, tell me about the fashion industry. And one thing that you mentioned the other day was January, even though you embrace January, it's also sometimes can be a little bit slower. There's maybe a different pressure of starting out with creativity. So can you share with us some of those experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. So, being a self-made business person, the way that I kind of navigated I would say my business journey outside of once I left corporate, once I stopped lobbying, left, then went to corporate, left that, started my own business. I really had to sort of create my own way of doing things. Right? There really wasn't anybody that I knew that followed the same path, and so, to some degree, you were excited about that, right? Because you're like, oh, I can invent this how I want, but there's really no precedent. There's no like right way of doing things, right? Sorry, my furry friend.
That's okay.
Um, but Monkey, he's just jealous that he can't
Sit
partake
with
in
you if you
this.
want, if you're comfortable with that. I mean,
Come here, Monkey. Come here.
we
Come here.
allow dogs, we allow whoever is around.
Oh my gosh. Well, hopefully he'll calm down here. He's just jealous. But yeah, so I had to create my own path. I had to create my own journey, which is it's good. It can be challenging, but it all but it all, kind of ties in together. The more seasoned you become in your craft, the more you realize having no rules but working ethically with standards is actually pretty great, right? There's a standard way of doing things. There's as long as you treat people well and you do things honestly, you're probably going to be okay. But the issue with that at some point, business just turned 10 in the fall, and yeah, it's very
Congratulations.
exciting and grew very, very, very quickly. During COVID, we actually tripled in size, and it
Wow.
was wild. Yeah, it was really wonderful to have that happen. But then after, when the world opened back up, and we're consultants, right? It's brand development. We're concept to market brand development. We jump into a fashion brand, we help the brand kind of reach another level, either coming up with their brand strategy or helping them with their entire concept to market brand development plan. And so when I reached 10 years, I realized, well, hold on a minute. Now, well, what's next? We can continue to do what we've done very well and do it over and over and over again. And that's why we don't have to spend a dollar on marketing, right? It's by
Mhm.
referral is really how this business has grown.
Beautiful.
Um, and but you do, as the owner, as the person, I own the business, but I also work in the business. I also work with some of the brands we work with, and I enjoy that very much. But I was sharing with you about the creativity plateau. It can be challenging, right? Like, how do you stay engaged with your own creativity? I have learned that I'm creative some days and I'm more administrative other days. I've learned
Yeah.
in some seasons I'm more of a morning person, and in other seasons I'm more of a night person. And some seasons it's like wherever I can get the inspiration, right? So yeah, I mean, I've learned to sort of write down, I guess, when I'm feeling slow creatively, what I can tap into. Right.
Love
So
that.
some of those things could be like fitness, could be travel, could be, they always say you have those people in your life that can fill your cup. So get around those people, and it's kind of going through that checklist of behavior that allows you to kind of feel like your most authentic self. And then that allows you to tie into your creative self. But it's very challenging. And, I'm in a bit of that now.
Yeah.
Um, but we're navigating, we're making it through.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually something that, we discussed the other day, which was this kind of sometimes it feels like you're in a rut or sometimes you're seeking creativity. And, I would say creativity is needed for all businesses, but especially in the brand development, I can imagine the pressure is a bit higher and your expectations are very high from your clients. But a couple of things that you said now, and I remember from our conversation was knowing yourself. So when you know that your energy level is low or your creative outlet is maybe not very high,
Mhm.
giving yourself a little bit of time and permission and forgiveness, perhaps. Like, I don't need to be creative 24/7. I think that's really important. I think that's important for emotions in general. Like, I'm not feeling that motivated. I'm not feeling that energetic. I'm not feeling that creative. I think that's an important thing is to know yourself, to be gentle with yourself. And then um, ways to change it up, right? Like seek out people who give me energy, seek out nature, seek out different environments to give me energy. So I just wanted to share a couple of things that I wrote down from our last conversation.
Yeah, I think what works for you today might not work for you next week. What worked for me 5 years ago when I was still building the business is not what's going to work for me today. And I think, my first language is Arabic. So there's a saying in Arabic it goes like, which means if you make a situation big and stressful and complicated, it will be stressful and complicated, right? But if you simplify it, صغيرها means like if you see it small, it will be small, right? And if we've learned anything, and you're also an author, you're also self-made, you've got a lot of things that you've done in your amazing career. It's hard to always make big things small. It's hard to simplify very
Yes.
complicated situations, and I think the front of your brain says, let me simplify this so I can navigate it and work through it, not around it, not avoid it, so it can be a bigger problem later. You say to yourself, let me work through it, but there's all these other things going on at the same time. So how can I make all of those things small? It's so complicated, and when you've got staff and you've got clients and crazy deadlines, and you sort of lose the fun of work and what you've
Yeah.
started, you know? And I think losing can somehow feel, it feels like work. And who wants that? You know what I mean? Who wants to
Yes.
work? You want to
Yeah.
enjoy and do right by people? So
Yeah.
get a bit hectic, but if you think of things are as complicated, they will be. I mention this because when it comes to creativity, I decide to go back to the simple things, like you said, health and
Yeah.
wellness, sleep. Honestly, and all my ladies, really anybody listening will might, feed into this a little and relate to it. Sometimes just putting some makeup on and doing your hair makes you feel creative. I know that sounds silly, but it's something to get you out of sort of the work from home behavior. I'm working on my doctorate currently, so I'm always reading, I'm always writing, I'm always researching, and I'm always talking to some of my other, doctoral candidates are in my program. And so I'm in words. I'm literally in a sea of words all day long. It seems somewhat daunting sometimes, but then I take a step back and say, all right, well, why did I choose to do this? This feels really exciting. This feels like
Yeah.
something that really, I chose to do this for a reason, right? Like there was a series of decisions that brought me here. And, how can I continue to grow and how can I motivate myself in so many ways? Both my brothers are engineers. One is electrical, one's mechanical. And so they're both I guess they're artists in their own craft, but they're more technical artists, right? Because
Mhm.
they're
Yeah.
engineers. And so, I share with them some of my journey with my doctorate or with business, and their perspective is just so different than mine. And I'm like, even if it's wrong, it still gets me thinking a different way, which sometimes can kind of recalibrate the way that I do things. And so I always tell people when you feel a little bit, I mean, listen, I'm no expert in creativity, but I've done it well enough this far, this long to have a couple tactics with it. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I mean, it ebbs and flows, if you will.
I'm sure, and I think that's the norm. And for someone who does brand development as a profession and very successfully, I think you are considered an expert. And I think it's really important to hear this, that a very successful person in brand development who has a pressure of creativity still has lulls, and it's about accepting that and adapting to it. One thing you said that I'm really nerding out on the past couple of years is sleep.
Oh,
Okay. And as a father of two teenage girls and uh, just humans around me that
mhm.
care about their image and their health,
Yeah.
but yet ignore sleep
Yes.
drives me insane. In
Yes.
fact, I'm reading, Why We Sleep, which is an incredible book, and I unfortunately forget the author's name at the moment, but it's an incredible book. And of course, I read it in the mornings, and by the time the girls wake up, I like come in with a fun fact. Did you know that if you sleep, and they're like, Dad, really? Like, I'm number one, I'm tired because I probably didn't sleep very well, but I'm not listening to you. So I'm going to talk a lot about sleep.
Yeah.
And then another thing, Lubna, is we've always nerded out on books. I still remember the first time me and
Yeah.
you sat at lunch and just kind of next level. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of things I talk about with regards to personal development for reading and sleeping. It's so
Absolutely.
unsexy maybe, but
Yeah.
reading and sleeping can help with so many things. Health and creativity and energy, you name it.
Well, when you're a kid, you fight sleep, right? And when you're an adult, you're craving it all the time. It's just so ironic. When you're a kid, um, you fight reading, you fight homework, and then you get older and you're like, let me get a doctorate. That sounds behavior as a as we grow into these people that we choose to be. And so I agree, sleep is everything. I was talking to a friend the other day, and I think it was like 8:30 p.m. or maybe 9 o'clock. And I'm like, all right, well, have a great day. I'm going to sleep. He's like, already? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to bed right now. And it feels so good to go to sleep so early, because you wake up in the morning feeling like, should you have slept comfortably, right? You wake up grateful, right? If you're lucky enough to wake up, wake up grateful to say, I have another day to do what I love and another day to interact with people, another day to contribute to society, if you will, and however you define that as beneficial to you. So, yeah, I mean, sleep is like such a
That's well, great.
simple core thing, right? But we ignore it because we think, no big deal, I'll make up for it tomorrow. But you don't realize it actually slows you down. It slows down your memory, it slows down your focus. And so in the morning to take all the vitamins you take, right? So that you can be a healthy person. And then you end up trying to like chase your energy all day. So to each his own.
And And by the way, someone just pointed out Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. He's the author. And I'll tell you, okay, this is where you might be like, why are you teaching me this, Naveen? But we actually never make up the sleep. The sleep is restoration that's needed for your brain, but it's not this thing of like, oh, you can make it up. We've actually done a little bit of damage by losing sleep.
Mm,
So I thought that was interesting.
yeah.
But I will, we can talk about sleep all day and we can talk about future episodes. I can call this underdog sleepers or non-sleepers. We can do a lot of things, but
The sleeping underdog.
ooh, the sleeping underdog. I
There you
do want
go.
to I do want to get into something that I still remember,
Yeah.
you telling me about your first venture, the apparel and that kind of story. Can you
Yeah.
summarize that? Because I think it's really cool. And then I also want to ask about self expectations after that.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that question. You sort of forget your pathway when you're so caught up in the daily life of the business and where it currently stands that you sort of forget to say, "Oh, I've survived this thing that I did. Oh my gosh, I did that." The joys of Facebook and Instagram and really just your phone, really you look back at these memories. It says 5 years ago today, 3 years ago today, 10 years ago today. And you're like, wow, I did that really cool thing. I totally forgot I did that. And that's a nice moment to sit with yourself and say, "Wow, like funny how your brain forgets the bad stuff and only remembers the good stuff," which is what you and I talked about last week. When somebody's talking about their success journey, they're only telling you the good things and the success stories, right? They don't tell you they lost $50,000 overnight because their supplier decided to close their doors. That happened to me. Those things really are tough and you forget about them and you don't share those with people
Yeah.
because wanna especially if it's like students or young people that are looking to get into the field, you don't wanna, you know, disappear their motivation before they're even in it, right? But with Lubna Designs, my brand truly organically grew. So I was working at a holdco in Columbus. I was working in finance, and my husband built me a sewing room at home, and he bought me a sewing machine because I just wanted to just learn to make things. I always like to make things. I'm Palestinian. I grew up in the Middle East, so making your own clothes was like not it's
Not a
not
stretch. It
uncommon.
was
Yeah, I mean, it's just you had fun with it. You kind of redid things, you remade what you currently had. And, a lot of like our dress is very modest and very nice. And so, I really wanted to bring that into the culture here, right? The American culture, be it what it is, you can find everything. And I wanted to be a part of like the modest society, right? I wanted the style started, very organically. I started to create little shirts that are peplum shirts and little removable belts that you could transform your shirt from a regular shirt as it is to now you put this belt around it and it creates this nice little ruffle on the bottom of your shirt. And so I started this brand very much just creating fun pieces for my friends and family. And then a friend of mine who was in Columbus said, "You should really try to do Fashion Week in Columbus." And at the time, right now we're number 3 in fashion designers. We put Columbus on the map insanely in the last 10, 12 years. But before that, fashion wasn't a conversation in the city of Columbus. So you really had a lot of movement in what you did with it, right? So I started to see clients. I went to a seamstress and she taught me all of the technical pieces of creating a garment, how beautifully constructed inside and out that it could be. And so I went down that technical route. And so um, I went to the seamstress. I did about 70 hours or so with her over a period of time. And so I created this collection. I showcased it in New York at a very small showcase at Central Park Hotel. Amazing. There's like 300 people there, all the press, all the media, buyers, media. And I come from the business world. So I invited stores to the show. I said, "Hey, this is my premiere collection. Please come and see me." And what's the worst they could do? Say no, ignore my email. I didn't care, right? So good morning. So they came to the show, and within the first 6 months of me developing the idea, and then within a few months of that developing the brand, Lubna Designs was born. And I showcased in Columbus, showcased in New York. I did small showcases in Miami and Los Angeles and Vancouver, really just for fun, while I was balancing my full-time job and getting my
Mhm.
MBA.
It was a side gig. It was a true side gig.
it was a that ended up being something that fueled my passion, it made me feel
Love it.
really good about just creating something with my own hands and not just my brain. And I work in strategy now. So all I'm using is my brain. I'm not making anything with my hands anymore. And I would love to get back on the sewing machine, right? But so fast forward the business, and we were in about 20 stores in the first 2 years. So
Wow.
nationwide, I integrated into like small wholesale orders at a bunch of different specialty boutiques. And that expanded into me investing in making a ready to wear collection. I manufactured that overseas, brought that over to the States, then was able to get into more stores and really used my business cap to get me, to create these business presentations and really to create the wholesale accounts with these businesses and these smaller stores. And so created the LD Sport, which was our sport collection. That was in 2016. And that's really when it was crazy. Sport was really the winner of the entire collection. It got a lot of attention. We ended up selling the business to a larger company here in the States, a company that actually my agency now was consulting at the time. And they
Wow.
said, where I was sitting in one of their board meetings, because what we do in the business is we might be invited to a board meeting to to add value or to give some sort of perspective when it comes to merchandising or pricing or import export or concepting in totality, whatever the contract is with the customer. And so I was sitting in this board meeting with this brand, and they said, "Oh, you know what we would like?" I remember the CEO sitting back and being like, "I want a brand like yours. What would it take to buy LD Sport?"
Oh,
And
what a
that's literally, Naveen,
dream
how
question.
exactly how it happened. And I'm sitting here thinking, "Oh, this guy's just joking. He's just kidding. He has no idea what he's saying." He's like, "No." He's like, "Really? What would it take to develop what you have?" And I'm like, "Well, that's a good conversation." And at the time, my father
Let me
passed
write
away
that
last year, but
down. It's gonna take a
exactly,
while with the zeros.
exactly. But my father really, who he passed away last year, but he helped me navigate that whole entire process because he's also a self-made businessman, much more successful and such a crazy business story that he's had, or he had. But he helped me navigate the whole idea. And, he's the one who said, "Well, wait a minute. This man isn't going to say this if he wasn't serious. Try to explore
Yeah.
the idea." And so I did. I pushed a little, not too hard, but I pushed a little, asked for a follow up meeting, did a call, flew back to their state where the business is. And that's how it happened. About a year later, the whole thing went through. And so it allowed me to take the capital um, that I gained from that into the business that I am running full time now, which is Ilmoda Brand Agency that works with all the businesses that we work with now. And so we took a lot of the best practices from not just LD Sport, but now my current brand, Her Denim. It's an eco-conscious denim brand for women, or really for anybody. And that's sort of a proof of concept for environmentally friendly brand development, using organic cotton that's sourced from overseas, and really a lot of those processes, and really what it really takes to develop that brand. And so great, crazy, business story, but I forget that that happens sometimes.
Oh my
Isn't that
gosh.
funny?
And that's the interesting thing about ourselves. Like you said, sometimes you just remember maybe with some short-term stuff, and like that itself is
Yeah,
a lifetime career for any aspiring person.
right.
It sounded like it happened pretty quickly, and I love those gems.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, number one, congratulations. Uh, I
Thank
think
you. It's
I
really
think you seem to be consistently evolving. I know you're a hard worker, and that's how luck happens is when you work hard and put yourself into opportunities. In my opinion, but I do want to ask something about again. We are hearing about a successful story, and
yeah.
that's awesome. Tell me about and I've met some, entrepreneurs who have exited their company or got acquired. And
Mhm,
tell me what that does to your psyche with regards to expectations for yourself and the
mhm,
expectations that are placed on you. Because I'm sure, again, you got bought out. You use that money towards, the company started and running right now for a decade. But like,
mhm,
tell me a little bit about the psyche because I'm sure,
mm.
there's different perspectives on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, you hear the story, and you and I chatted about this before, is that you hear the story of the roses and the butterflies that took place in this botanical garden and how this business became so beautiful. You don't hear about the ebb and flow in between. You don't hear about, doing a bad deal with a supplier and them completely going bankrupt and not letting your business know, and you're bootstrapping the
Right.
entire thing with your own dollars. You don't hear about that part. Not that a person doesn't want to tell you, but it's just, that's just part of business. It's part of business that people might take your proprietary way of doing business and try to use it within their company. And now you have to send cease and desists around the country because people
Yeah.
are trying to copy, your intellectual property. And so, there's a lot of that happens. And so what happens is like when you sell your business, I mean, really for me, it was really, really exciting because I never
Mhm.
even knew that Lubna Designs would be born, let alone people would love it enough and see value in it enough to sell it. I was just having fun with it. You know, First 2 years of the business, I ended up quitting my full-time job and doing my design business full time. I opened a showroom in the short north, and that really became the Ilmoda office once I sold LD. And it was a true, it felt like a natural evolution for the business. I started representing other brands and working with them and getting really excited about the journey that they were now on, right? Because I remember being there. And really how Ilmoda was born is that so many brands would say, well, how did you get Lubna Designs to this point? Or how did you do this? Why are you in Cosmo? I thought you just started your brand last year. How am I seeing you in Harper's Bazaar and blah, 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 right? And I'm like, well, wait a minute. It's not, to me, it wasn't that hard because I put my business hat on, right? But a lot of designers are more creative versus business minded. And
Yeah.
so that's why there's job security for people like us because we're business brains, right? But we understand the creative side of things.
Yeah.
And so, it's exciting, but you sort of create this I always have to perform behavior.
Yes.
But I read something the other day. This One of the writers that I follow, her social media, she put something up there. She said, "I need to break away from um, my tying my personal value that I see with myself next to my productivity." So, say for
Yeah.
example, you have a day where you just need to veg out, and that's part of your creative process too, right? That's part of you just becoming, better tomorrow. So, you need to rest today, right? But if you do that for one too many days in a row, you start to kind of get mad at yourself. You're like, wait a minute, I didn't produce, or why didn't I do this, or I didn't do that. During COVID, I was approached by somebody at Kendall Hunt, it's an academic publisher, to work with my co-author for my university textbook I authored. It's called The Power of Brand Development in Fashion. And I remember thinking, oh, that's kind of a fun project. Like, do a book for students, and this is what it looks like.
That's
And
awesome.
Wendy Goldstein is my co-author. She's awesome. This actually can be purchased by anybody, not just a university. But the power of branding in fashion is a really great tool because we took one of our master tools for Ilmoda, and we essentially broke it down in so many ways so that students can actually learn from the experts, right? All these big brands like Nike and others are learning from these processes. And so why not give it to students? And so
Yeah.
that opportunity came up, and I'm like, well, that's a great way to create impact. And that kind of invigorated me, right? I didn't necessarily seek the opportunity, but it was there. And I said, you know what, why not do this? Why not be a part of something bigger than me, right? I don't know what the students will do with this information, but I hope they take it and, they do something great with it. And so I think for me, it inspired me to do more, but there is a level of hyper productivity you expect of yourself all the time. Like, I always need to produce. During COVID, it's like, well, what are you going to do with your business now? Or everybody's looking at you for that business motivation. Um, and so it's exciting and it's great, but at the same time, well, who's going to fill my cup? Where am I going to get my creativity or my
Yeah.
cup from? So when you and I chatted a couple weeks ago, I'm like, oh my gosh, Naveen might be able to fill my creative cup from time to time, right? So that's why we clicked so well. But yeah. So does that answer your question as far
It
as the
it
psyche?
totally does, and congrats on your book, and there's a
Yeah,
already folks asking about the link to it, so we'll make sure we provide it after this show.
yeah.
Um, and then we'll also, obviously scan Ilmoda brands. It's what Lubna focuses on. I wanna, we have like 2 minutes left, but I do wanna ask about something you said that was so powerful a few weeks ago.
Mhm,
And, you know, a lot of us have had adversity, especially the last few years, and multiple facets.
mhm,
You said something that you were walking through the adversity the last couple of years quietly. You were walking
Mhm.
through it quietly, and something resonated because number one, I'm human and I understand that. And I think other people will too. And I believe a lot of people are walking through their trauma or adversity quietly. Can you expand on that at all? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Really, what I was speaking to on our call was, you're expected to perform, right? You're expected to be this person all the time, and you're expected to have the smile on your face. And really, the way I show up in the world, I show up, try to be as positive as possible all the time. But I mentioned my father earlier on this chat. But losing him last year was very sudden. He was 63. He was young and very healthy, and so very tragic loss. And the world, once they send you their condolences, they expect you to just accept them and then sort of move on. And it's
yeah,
nothing negative or anything toward anybody. It's just how the world is. It's how, unfortunately, America is. Um, and so, we're just a go, go, go society, and everybody wants you to just feel your thing, feel it in private, move forward.
yeah,
And that's what I did. And but unfortunately, it caused me to hold on to, it's somewhat personal, but it's okay. I'm fine acknowledging it. It forced me to hold on to my grief for much longer than I probably would have had I really taken the sabbatical I intended to take. But what happened was obviously very sudden, and it sort of, I told you on the phone, shook the ground I walked on. It just forced me to redefine so much of what was going on in my life. And, what do I love? On a great day, I can commit to 10 things I love to do, but on a bad day, what are my non-negotiables? And so that's something I learned last year and said, I know that this sounds great. I was the board president for the Fashion Council for about 7 years. I just termed off of the board because we have term limits. This month, I just termed off. And now I think to myself, I have all this time that's available to me. And, obviously it'll go back into my business, go back into some more passion projects and things and philanthropy here in the city. But ultimately, it forced me to say, okay, well, now that my time is free, what am I choosing to do with that time? Understanding that bad things could happen any day. And do I really want, but good things can happen too. But do I really want to cram my schedule so much, cram my brain so much that should anything happen that way again, I don't have the space and not the heart space or the mental space for it. And so the world expected me to just continue to be who I was all the time. And I really wasn't ready to do that, and I had to put my face on and I had to be around my friends and be around my family. One of my best friends was just so, 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 so pivotal for my healing last year. And, really helped me kind of see things in a way that I wanted to see them. And I had to lean into people. I'm not very good at asking for help. And so that's the untold part. People think
yeah,
you are this person all the time. And it's like, well, wait a minute, I have to lean into people too. I can't be the strong one all the time. Right. And
yeah,
so yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
well, as I mentioned before, I'm sorry to hear that, and I know it's taken a while, and it's grieving is a lifelong process, and unfortunately, I know as well. And I think you hit the nail on the head, which is the world expects a lot from you. The world will keep taking from you if you allow it to, and sometimes we need to turn that noise off. And I also have found seek people who have gone through those experiences. So grieving, there's really no roadmap of, there's expectations and phases, but in the end, seeking out people who have gone through that, seeking out people who have mutual love, right? Like really support and love you, has been really important, I think. And then hopefully, I mean, this is some of the goal of the show is sometimes talk about it. Sometimes
Yes.
talk about it when you're ready.
Yep.
And it sounds like you're talking about it right now, which I think can be helpful for not only you, but for others who are going through it or unfortunately will go through it or have been through it. And I think that's really important. It's really just sharing the real that
Mhm.
is more unifying
Yeah.
than taking anyone down.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think a lot of times, especially in business, people shy away from feelings and from the personal piece, but that's a part of who you are. It's a part of your journey, right? I'm an immigrant. English is not my first language. That's part of my journey. I lean into that. I
Yeah.
understand that to get to where I am today, I had to power through these other challenges. Part of that is growing from the situations that you've been in. And it isn't butterflies and roses and botanical gardens all the time, even though you want it to be. It is a journey. It's always, it's always one of those things where you just have to be honest with yourself, see things as they are, and radically accept whatever's going on around you.
Boom.
And so, yeah,
That's it. Radically accept yourselves, everyone. Radically accept yourselves. Ask for help. Be vulnerable. Share the real.
yeah,
Turn off the world when you need it to. Take your time. Give yourself permission. Keep
yeah,
telling stories. I think
yeah,
that's it. I think I want
absolutely.
to. We can talk forever, but unfortunately, this is a half-hour show. There are questions out there, and we'll answer them on social because
Okay,
they're saved
okay,
there. So
great.
unfortunately, we can't get to the questions, but I do want to say thank you so much for spending time with us live here. And any parting words?
No, I'm grateful to be here. I would love to support the show any way I can, and like you said, I'm happy to jump in wherever the chat is to answer any questions that were directed toward our conversation. But I'm grateful. I'm excited for this year. Thank you for including me, and I know you and I will have many chats to follow. So I wish
Yes.
everybody the best.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we'll get back to you here soon. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this show and want to continue to learn more, follow me on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Help us tell these underdog untold stories by sharing it with people who could learn and be inspired from it. Remember, underdogs don't stop.